Chapter 10, Moving Out. Their mother might as well have told them that the basement was flooded or the roof was on fire, Wally thought. She had to be half out of her mind. The heat had affected her, too. There was no place for the Malloys to sleep. No way could they fit 4 more people into their house. He looked at his brothers, Jake and Josh, were thunderstruck, but Peter grinned happily at the prospect. Oh, Ellen, how could you possibly put us up? Mrs. Malloy protested. Where there's a will, there's a way. You'd do the same for me, Mrs. Hatford said. There's no sense in you starting out with no idea where you'll spend the night or how long you'll have to be there. At least the kids know each other and they can play outside. Mrs. Malloy spoke into the telephone again. Ellen has invited us to stay here till we get our power back, George. Yes, I know. It's a great imposition on them, but I don't know what else to do. Yes. All right. Yes, I will. When she hung up the phone, she said, You're an angel of mercy, Ellen. George says he'll call the minute the power comes back on, but almost the whole state is shut down, and so are parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. We're glad to have you here, Mrs. Hatford said. Now, we'll just figure out where everyone will sleep. Mother, Jake said earnestly in a low voice. Mrs. Hatford ignored the protest. The twins have the largest bedroom, so I think I'll put the 4 of you in there. They have twin beds, and I'll get an air mattress that sleeps too, that we can squeeze onto the floor. That will be absolutely fine, said Mrs. Moy. Mother, Jake protested. What about us? One of you boys can take your sleeping bag into Wally's room, and the other can sleep in Peter's, Mrs. Hatford said. Wally tried to imagine the Malloys living in their house. There's only one bathroom for 10 people, he choked. Plus the powder room here on the first floor. We'll make do. There just won't be any long showers, that's all. In fact, you boys may want to forget showers for a day or two, his mother said. That was fine with Wally, but the thought of waiting in line to use the toilet and everybody waiting, knowing what you were waiting for, did not appeal to Wally at all. Jake and Josh were still in shock. They'll sleep in our beds, Wally heard Jake whisper. They'll look in our closet, Josh whispered back. Wally glanced across the table at Caroline, Beth, and Eddie. They didn't seem any happier about it than his brothers were. Okay, said Mrs. Hatford determinedly. We're going to make this as painless as possible. And who knows, maybe it will be fun. Like going to the dentist is fun, Wally thought. We'll do all we can to help, said Mrs. Malloy. Jake and Josh, said their mothers, go get some of your clothes to wear for the next few days. Take your sleeping bags, too. They're in the closet. And a few games might be nice. Wally and Peter, go to your rooms to make sure everything's off the floor so the twins can put down their sleeping bags. Like robots, all but Peter, who practically skipped to the stairs. The boys rose from their chairs and started toward the hall. I'm so sorry to impose like this, Wally heard Mrs. Moy say. I know how the kids must hate it. It's not much trouble, really, said Mrs. Hatford. She lies, Wally thought. At the top of the stairs, Jake said, This can't be happening. It's my worst nightmare. Worse than my worst nightmare. Eddie will be sleeping in my bed. I'll have to decontaminate it practically before I can sleep in it again. I'm taking my own pillow, said Josh. I don't want anyone sleeping on my pillow. I'm not sleeping in Peter's room either, said Josh. Wally, you can sleep in Peter's room and Jake and I will take yours. This always happens. Wally had known it would happen, but he opened his mouth and said, No way. What do you mean, said Jake. N as in noodle and O as in Oreo, said Wally. It's my room and I'm sleeping in my own bed. There, he'd said it. Jake looked like he might punch him in the mouth, but he didn't. Well, then we're both going to sleep on your floor, Jake said. We'll put all our stuff in Peter's room, but we're not sleeping in separate bedrooms. Okay by me, said Wally. Amazing how great you feel when you stand up for yourself, he thought. He went into his room and kicked all the extra stuff under his bed. The worn underwear, the new sneakers, the National Wildlife magazine, the kickball. Then he went across the hall and stood in the brothers' doorway, watching them yank stuff out of their desk drawers before the girls got upstairs. Don't let them see any old papers, said Josh. Don't let them see any old school stuff at all, said Jake. Look at this, Josh said, holding up a picture he had drawn in kindergarten. A boy with a head as big as a pumpkin and a strange smile on his face. There must have been dozens more, all crammed into a bottom drawer. And this, said Jake. There was a report card from second grade, and the teacher had written on the bottom, Jake could be a better student if he tried, but his temper and impulsiveness sometimes get in the way. You better take that along, said Josh. Who knows what else you've got in your desk? Probably something even worse. We should just move the desk, Jake said in despair. Take any money you got lying around, all your state quarters, Josh, your stamp collection too. And don't forget all your baseball caps, said Josh. Eddie would love to get her hands on those. They grabbed jeans and shorts from their closet, then pushed the remaining clothes as far back in the corner as possible so that the girls' clothes wouldn't touch theirs when they hung them up. There were footsteps on the stairs, and the twins left their bedroom just as Mrs. Malloy and Mrs. Hatford appeared at the top. Let me help you with your sheets, Mrs. Malloy said. If you'd like, said Mrs. Hatford. If you could put fresh sheets on the beds in the twins' rooms, I'll make sure you have plenty of towels in the bathroom. Wally and his brothers fled back downstairs and found themselves alone with the Malloy girls in the kitchen. Talk about a bummer, Eddie said at last. I'd rather run over my room to a hippopotamus. Thanks for nothing, said Eddie. Are you guys going to start fighting again? I think this could be fun. Everyone looked at Peter as though he had just stepped out of a spaceship. Fun? Having girls in their bedroom, using the same bathroom, having to get up in the morning and face each other across the breakfast table? But there was some truth in what Peter was saying, Wally had to admit. The chief offenders were Jake and Eddie. As long as they were fighting, it was hard for anyone else to get along. Chapter 11, Stop Complaining. Well, I guess we're stuck, Bev said. We'll have to make the best of it. Yes, said Peter, no more fighting. So who's fighting? I just don't want them sleeping in my bed, that's all. Don't worry, said Eddie. I wouldn't sleep in your bed for $1,000,000. I'll be on the air mattress, you can bet. It must be awful at home, said Beth. Mom said Dad told her it was 96 degrees in our upstairs. By tomorrow, all the food in the refrigerator will be spoiled. Ugh. It's supposed to be 104 here tomorrow, said Josh. What are we going to do today? We could trap flies in the sun and put a magnifying glass on them and watch them go crazy, said Eddie. That's cruel. Besides, I don't want anything to do with bugs, Caroline declared. At least we can go swimming if it gets unbearable, said Beth. Not, said Eddie. We packed our bathing suits, remember? We thought we'd be home by tonight. I know, Peter said. We can make peanut butter and banana milkshakes and bake cookies. It's too hot for cookies, Peter, said Beth. We could take Caroline's school picture and make copies of it at the library and turn them into wanted posters at the post office, said Jake. Not, said Caroline. We can make lemonade and sell it at a stand out front. We've tried that, but people don't come down our block much. Monopoly? Boring. What happened was that when the bedrooms were finally ready with sleeping bags on the floor in Wally's room, fresh sheets on the bed in the twins' bedroom, and an air mattress on the floor, the girls shut themselves up in the boys' bedroom for the afternoon, sprawled out on the beds with books and magazines for company, and Wally and his brother spent the afternoon on the porch. By 5 o'clock, Mrs. Malloy insisted that the girls come downstairs and be sociable. And if they couldn't be sociable, she said, they could at least ask Mrs. Hatford what they might do to help. Well, you could set the table for dinner, Mrs. Hatford replied. Your mother and I have been cooking extra meals because I have to go back to work tomorrow. Hopefully, even if it gets hotter here in Buckman, we'll have enough food prepared that we won't have to use the oven again for several days. What if it turns out we can't go home for a week, Mother? Eddie said worriedly. I doubt it will be a week, Miss Molly told her. I called your father this afternoon, and he said the power company hopes to have power restored to all of Ohio in 4 days at the most. 4 days, thought Caroline. 4 days of lying in a room at the Hatfords was like a prison sentence. But she took the handful of silverware Mrs. Hatford gave her and dutifully walked around the dining room table, placing the knives and forks beside each plate. When Mr. Hatford walked in at 6, the shirt of his postal uniform was drenched in perspiration, and he had a small towel draped around his neck. He stopped and stared at the Moys in surprise. Well, hello, he said. Tom, we got a little emergency here, his wife told him. George called to say that there's a huge power outage in Ohio due to the heat. No electricity, no traffic lights or refrigeration or air conditioning. There's no use in Jean and the girls going home to that, and no hotel here for them to go to. So I've invited them to stay with us for a few days until they get their power back. Mr. Hatford blinked. Caroline supposed he wasn't any happier about it than the boys had been. Well, any port in a storm, right? We are so grateful for Ellen's invitation, but we know this is such an imposition. We're going to be as helpful as possible, and I've made a couple of lemon pies. I hope that will make up for it a little. Mr. Hatford laughed. Well, now, I don't have any objection to that. Yes, I heard about that power outage in Ohio. Pretty serious, I understand. I need to take a shower before dinner. I can take a shower, he said. Yes, we've talked about conserving the hot water, Mrs. Hatford said, and Mr. Hatford headed for the stairs. Dinner helped perk everyone up. It was a cold meal of tuna and macaroni salad with homemade rolls, sliced tomatoes, corn on the cob, and Mrs. Malloy's lemon pies. The adults did most of the talking, with Mr. Hatford telling about his how crowded it was in town with so many alumni returning for the college's anniversary. How impossible it was to drive around campus delivering mail with cars parked all over the place, mostly where they shouldn't be. After the meal was over, the girls did the dishes while the adults sat in the living room watching the evening news. Three-fourths of the state of Ohio has been affected by the current power failure, the announcer said. Crews are working around the clock, but the governor has said there is still no clear idea of when all communities will have power. Generators are being set up in gymnasiums where citizens with health risks may go to cool off, but travelers are urged to stay out of Ohio until the crisis is over. Caroline and her sisters joined the Hatford boys on the porch when the kitchen was clean. The next night, it would be the boys' turn to clean up. Mrs. Malloy had talked them into doing the dishes by hand to save the hot water for showers. It also seemed to Caroline as though her own mother was trying to make things as difficult as possible. The boys had taken over the rocking chair and the glider, so Caroline, Beth, and Eddie sprawled on the steps. Caroline thought the boys did look a little smug having escaped kitchen duty this time, their stomachs full of lemon pie. Instead of saying something pleasant to the girls, Jake said, "Too bad the power didn't go out when you were halfway back to Ohio. Your dad would have to call while you were still here." "Yeah, I don't know what you're complaining about," said Eddie. "You've got free maid service. We did the dishes, remember?" "Hey, you guys," said Josh. "You know what I think? I think you two ought to go hide in a cave or something till the heat wave's over. I'm tired of hearing you gripe at each other all the time. I mean it." "I am too," said Beth. "Nobody likes that we have to be here, you know." Jake and Eddie looked quickly around at the others, surprised, it seemed, that their own brothers and sisters were turning against them. "I just wish there was something exciting to do," said Eddie. "We never did go to that old coal mine. I'm going to go up there and look around." "Yeah, I dare you," said Jake. "I dare you both," said Josh. "Maybe that'll stop your complaining." And Caroline knew that a dare to Eddie was as good as a done deal. Chapter 12, Undercover Operation. Wally did not know when anything had felt weirder than having Eddie, Beth, and Caroline sleeping in his house, here in the upstairs, in Jake and Josh's bedroom. The twins had dumped all their stuff on the floor in Peter's room and were sprawled out now on the sleeping bags in Wally's room. But those sleeping bags alone took up most of the floor space. If Wally had to get up in the night, he'd have to take wide steps, putting his feet only on the places where there wasn't any arm or leg. "That stinks. They'll snoop through everything," said Jake. "I got most of the stuff out of our desk, though. I got the journals I was keeping for a while and all your baseball cards." Suddenly, Jake gave a little cry. "Our underwear!" he gasped. "We didn't clean out the dresser. We left our underwear." Wally watched as Jake fell back in the sleeping bag, eyes closed. For once, something humiliating was happening to Wally's brothers and not to him. He imagined Caroline coming down to breakfast in the morning with Jake's underpants on her head. He imagined Eddie going over to his mother's vegetable garden in the backyard and picking tomatoes for lunch, using Josh's underwear as a basket. He imagined Beth fastening little pink bows on the front of each pair. Man, oh man, that could be embarrassing. "We've got to get them out of there," said Josh. "The girls?" asked Wally. "No, the underwear," Jake and Josh howled together. "What are you going to do? Sneak in there while they're asleep? Everyone's gone to bed." "I don't know. We'll think of something," said Jake. And who knew what that something would be? It had been a hot, miserable day, made worse by Wally's brothers taking up all the floor space with their sleeping bags and all the air with their complaints, Jake's in particular. Not only that, but their shoes stank. All Wally wanted to do was fall asleep and forget how many people were in the house just now. Once in the night, Wally had to go to the bathroom. He did not want to go out in the hall and bump into the Malloy girls. Maybe he could hold it until the morning, he thought. He turned onto his left side, he turned onto his right, but he couldn't hold it much longer. Finally, he got out of bed, edged his way around his brothers, and slowly opened his door. Then, in his tiger pajamas, he stepped out into the hall and took a step toward the bathroom. There, coming straight toward him, was Caroline Malloy in her little mermaid pajamas. A tiger and a mermaid did not mix at all. He knew that Caroline, being a guest, should be allowed to go in the bathroom first, but Wally's feet kept moving. He made it 2 steps ahead of Caroline and he slipped inside and locked the door. When he was through, he drank half a glass of water, being careful not to touch any glass that the Malloys might have used. Then he opened the door, and there was Caroline with her arms folded. Back in his room again, Wally pulled the covers over his head and tried to count the number of days, hours, minutes, seconds that the Malloys might be in his house. He must have dropped off to sleep because the next thing he knew, Jake was shaking his arm. Wally, Wally, huh? Wally murmured. Listen, we need you to do something. Huh? Wally said again. We need you to sneak into our bedroom and scoop up all our underwear from the dresser. No, said Wally. No. Your feet are smaller. You can creep around that room easier than we can with our big feet. We'd probably step on someone. It's 4 a.m. They're all asleep. No, do it yourself. It's your underwear, said Wally. Wally, said Josh, do you remember those underpants Grandma sent you for the birthday last year? The ones with your name on the seat? Yes. And you know how Mom gets our underwear mixed up sometimes when she does the laundry? Well, if the Malloys see our underwear, they won't know exactly who it belongs to, Jake or me. But if they see any with Wally on them, they'll know it's for you. Wally closed his eyes, but it didn't keep out the pictures. A picture of Eddie riding around town on the Hatfords' bikes with Wally's underwear flying from the handlebars. Where is your underwear? He asked. The bottom drawer. Just softly open the door, tiptoe around the air mattress, pull out the bottom drawer of our dresser, and scoop up all the stuff. Then bring it back here. That's all you have to do. All he had to do. It was like asking him to climb Mount Everest and be back by sundown. Wally got out of bed. He walked to the door. Goodbye, he said to his brothers, because if Miss Malloy and her brothers and her daughters found him creeping around their bedroom at 4 a.m, he might not live to see the next day. He padded down the hall, gently opened the door of the room. He waited, holding his breath while he took in the room, trying to see where everyone was sleeping. Carefully, Wally made his way around the air mattress with Caroline and Eddie on it, around the bed where Beth was lying, around the other bed where Mrs. Malloy lay sleeping, one arm dangling over the edge, and over the dresser along the far wall. Slowly, Wally stooped down and, feeling around, put his hands on the 2 knobs of the bottom drawer. Slowly, so it wouldn't make a sound, he pulled it open. He held his breath and waited. Sure that any minute Mrs. Malloy would rise and say, "Just what do you think you're doing in our room, young man?" Or that his dad would see the door open and thunder, "Wally, what are you doing in there?" But no one spoke. No one stirred. Taking a deep breath, Wally put his hands in the drawer, one at each end, and scooped up all the underwear. Now he'd be discovered for sure. Once again, however, no one stirred. With his right foot, he softly edged the drawer closed. Wally turned slowly around. Step by step, pause, breath, step by step, pause, breath. He reached the door, still no sound. This was too easy. Things never turned out this well for Wally Hatford. Something always had to go wrong. It was inevitable. He stepped out into the hall, transferring all the underwear to one arm. He used his other hand to softly close the door behind him. He went down the hall to where Jake and Josh were waiting for him, and they pulled him into the bedroom and closed the door behind him. "Way to go, Wally. You did it. Wally, you're the best. Did you get it all?" "Yep," said Wally. Now he almost hoped there was a pair of his underpants mixed up with theirs. Jake turned on the light, and the boys stared. There, on the floor, was a pile of the girls' underwear. Underpants with daisies on them. One pair that said Monday and another that said Friday. There were pink underpants with hearts and blue underpants with stripes, and even a pair of red that read Caroline on the seat.